Welcome back. You're watching World News, and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. Polish Finance Minister Andrzej Domański said today that Poland will push for increased investment in defense during its presidency of the European Union, as a threat from Russia will remain for years to come.
We need a much more significant investment in defence now, not in 4 or 5 years' time. That is why we will be discussing the various proposals that are emerging in the public domain. Of course, in the presidency, we take into account the fact that some countries have a slightly different view of the instruments for financing an increased defence effort. On the other hand, we are aware, I'm absolutely convinced, that member states know that there can be no return to business as usual. We have new geopolitical challenges. The threat from Russia is present and will be present in the years to come, and Europe must be ready for it.
Volodymyr Zelenskyy says Donald Trump has the strong resolve required to bring a just end to Moscow's war in Ukraine. Writing on social media about his meeting in Paris with Trump and Emmanuel Macron on Saturday, Zelenskyy said Vladimir Putin fears the U.S. president-elect.
I reiterate my gratitude to President Macron for organising it, as well as my deep gratitude to President Trump for his strong resolve to bring this war to a fair end. This is the right approach, and it is important that all details are thoroughly worked out to ensure that peace is truly durable. We know that America has the capacity to accomplish remarkable things that others have not been able to achieve. To succeed in ending this war, we need unity, the unity of America, Europe, and everyone in the world who values security, as well as strong positions and guarantees for peace. I told President Trump that Putin fears only him and perhaps China. And that's the truth. Only decisiveness can bring this war to a just end and ensure lasting peace.
High-level talks are scheduled in Brussels today between NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte and Moldovan President Maia Sandu. It comes as the Eastern European country is in the midst of political turmoil due to a growing energy crisis. TVP World's EU correspondent Angela Skudgens has the latest from the Belgian capital.
The Moldovan President Maia Sandu will be in Brussels to meet with high-level officials, including NATO's Secretary-General Mark Rutte, as well as other delegates at the Northern Atlantic Council. Now, while the agenda is hush-hush, we can expect the leaders to discuss Moldova's strategic position in Europe. This is particularly with Ukraine's defensive strategies against Russia. Now, there was an election in November in Moldova where the pro-European president was re-elected for a second term. Moldovans also saw this as an opportunity to tell the government that they wanted to join the EU. Now, this accession bid was reaffirmed when the Foreign Minister, Mihail Popsoy, visited Brussels to tell European leaders that the country was keen to join the bloc. Now, while we will wait and see what comes out of this high-level meeting, and we'll watch the channels and keep you updated as the news comes in. This is Angela Skudgens in Brussels for TVP World.
The Moldovan separatist region of Transnistria wants to introduce a state of emergency. This comes in response to possible disruption in gas deliveries from Russia. If a state of emergency was declared in Transnistria, all local businesses would be required to monitor their gas use. A ban on gas export would also be introduced. The local parliament is set to vote on declaring a state of emergency on Wednesday, December the 11th. This move follows Ukraine suggesting no renewal to gas contracts between Russia and the European countries in 2025. For now, Moldova, which Transnistria is an internationally recognized part of, imports Russian gas based on a contract valid until October of 2026. Protesters in Tibilisi took to the streets for another night in a row, demanding a rerun of the contested parliamentary elections and a return to further integration with the EU. The thousands that gathered in front of the Georgian parliament were met by police using tear gas and water cannons.
For the 12th consecutive night, protesters in the Georgian capital were calling for the resignation of Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze. Their anger was also directed towards Bidzina Ivanishvili, the founder of the Georgian Dream Party, who had his symbolic coffin burned in front of the parliament building. Since the outbreak of the second wave of the protests, Georgian police arrested over 400 people, including journalists.
Moving to the Middle East, a number of European countries have paused processing asylum applications for Syrians following the seizure of power by rebel forces in Damascus.
News that President Bashar al-Assad had fled Syria following more than a decade of civil war was widely celebrated by refugees in Europe. Millions of Syrians left the country to escape the violence, seeking shelter in the EU. Austria, the Netherlands, Norway, Italy, and Germany all announced on Monday that they would suspend Syrian asylum applications. Berlin says it is pausing requests until the political situation in Syria becomes clearer.
The U.S. Secretary of State has said that America will be supporting the Syrian people in rebuilding their country. At a Monday awards ceremony organized by the State Department, Anthony Blinken said the United States has clear and enduring interest in the country. Among them, preventing weapons of mass destruction left in Syria from falling into the wrong hands.
The United States has clear and enduring interests in Syria. We have a strong interest in preventing the reemergence of ISIS, given the death and destruction that it's wrought for so long. We have a clear interest in ensuring that whatever weapons of mass destruction or components are left in Syria do not fall into the wrong hands. We have a clear interest in doing what we can to avoid the fragmentation of Syria, mass migrations from Syria, and, of course, the export of terrorism and extremism. The region and the world have a responsibility to support the Syrian people as they begin to rebuild their country and chart a new direction.
The Prime Minister of Israel has addressed the presence of the Israel Defense Forces in the buffer zone between Israel and Syria. According to Netanyahu, only control of the Golan Heights guarantees safety and sovereignty for Israel. At the same time, the controversial Prime Minister thanked Donald Trump for recognizing the area as Israeli and said it will forever be an inseparable part of the Israeli state.
Together with Defense Minister Israel Katz and with the backing of all cabinet members, I instructed the Israel Defense Forces to seize the buffer zone between us and Syria and the positions controlling and adjacent to it. This also includes part of Mount Hermon called the Syrian Hermon. Today, everyone understands the great importance of our being there, on the Golan, and not at their foot. Our control of the Golan Heights guarantees our security. It guarantees our sovereignty. And on this occasion, I would like to thank my friend, President-elect Donald Trump, for accepting my request to recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights in 2019. Today, this historic recognition gains stronger validity and greater importance. The Golan Heights will forever be an inseparable part of the state of Israel.
Israel is pushing on with its military operation in the Golan Heights and across Syria. Overnight, several attacks targeted Homs and Latakia in northern Syria. The airstrikes occurred following the UN's appeal to Israeli authorities for the IDF to withdraw behind the lines agreed upon in the 1974 agreement. At the same time, Israeli officials are adamant they're not violating any international law.
The Israeli occupation of the Golan Heights has found support from the United States. According to officials from both countries, Israel has every right to defend itself, and control of Golan Heights is a means to that end. Moreover, the fleeing Syrian army abandoned its positions, leaving arms and equipment behind that could later be used by terrorists in their fight against the state of Israel. At the same time, Israeli officials have said the occupation of the Golan Heights will be limited and temporary.
At a briefing on Monday evening, U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said that the U.S. supports Israel's limited and temporary incursion into the Golan Heights. He added that Israel had undertaken the operations to prevent Syrian outposts from falling into hands of terrorist groups. At the same time, Miller pointed out that the U.S. wishes to see an Israeli withdrawal to previously agreed zones in the future.
The Syrian army abandoned its positions in the area around the negotiated Israeli-Syrian buffer zone, which potentially creates a vacuum that could have been filled by terrorist organizations that would threaten the state of Israel and would threaten civilians inside Israel. Every country has the right to take action against terrorist organizations, and every country, I think, would be worried about a possible vacuum that could be filled by terrorist organizations on its border, especially in volatile times, as we obviously are in right now in Syria.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is due to testify for the first time in his corruption court case. He is facing fraud and bribery charges from 3 criminal investigations in a trial that began in 2020. It is alleged Netanyahu granted $500 million in regulatory favors in exchange for positive media coverage, illegally received more than $200,000 in gifts, and introduced legislation in return for favorable coverage. Netanyahu denies all charges and has pleaded not guilty. China has deployed a fleet of some 90 ships near Taiwan. Taiwanese authorities have expressed security concerns over the drills.
This number of Chinese Navy and Coast Guard ships in the region was indeed very alarming, and how they are scattered beyond the eastern border of Taiwan between the first and second island chain. I think China's intention is very clear. Until now, we still haven't seen any announcement from China or the People's Liberation Army regarding the drills. Therefore, it is still a regular training. But using a large number of troops for regular drills in such an extended area like this, I think we need to not just closely monitor whether the military trainings will turn into war. We also have to watch the influence and impact it could bring to neighboring countries.
Poland is getting ready to assume the presidency of the Council of the European Union. Preparations for the program are at the top of the agenda of the Polish government's Tuesday meeting. The key objective of the presidency will be security, a theme that includes external security and migration policy, an official at the Polish Prime Minister's office said on Tuesday. Poland also intends to pursue a policy of energy security, increasing the EU's independence from foreign energy sources. In addition, the program will prioritize economic security, internal security, and food, as well as climate security. Polish Minister for European Union, Adam Szłapka, is scheduled to hold a press conference at 2:15 Warsaw time.
Miałem okazję o tym rozmawiać z prezydentem Wołodymyrem Zeleńskim, dlatego będziemy musieli dzisiaj szybko pracować, a także z Kijowa prosto przyjeżdża do mnie szef.
And with that, we end our news broadcast for now, but please do stay tuned here on TVP World, as we will be back in just a moment with more news and features.